Rejoice, Silo fans! The latest news from IT has made its way to the Down Deep, and I can now say that Silo has been renewed for a third and fourth season. As someone who hasn't read the books, this is quite exciting. Let's say Juliette makes it back to her silo and the rebellion is successful. Where does the story go from there? Plus, there are 50 other silos we've yet to explore, and the bigger picture of who made them and why. But for now, we're focused on episode 206 as tensions in the silo reach an all-time high. But before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe. Every little bit helps the channel out. Episode 206, titled Barricade, sees the situation in the Down Deep grow ever the more dire. A barricade has been set up on level 130, preventing shipments of food from reaching the citizens below. The hope is that Bernard can starve them into submission. To make matters worse, the food they do have has been laced with rat poison, meaning someone in the Down Deep is working for the other side. Luckily, a shipment of food from level 122 secretly brought through the trash chute buys them some time, and you can see just how fragile this rebellion is as the people in the Down Deep face the reality of starvation. If this rebellion is going to work, they'll need to find a way to solve this food problem, and leave it to a bunch of engineers to devise an audacious yet effective plan. Two teams form a pincer attack on the barricade. While one team breaks it down using the hydraulic cable Knox and Shirley stole last episode, another saws through the floor of level 129, allowing them to flank the raiders. And even though the raiders are armed, they are outnumbered. Thus, Amundsen has to concede to their demands. The Down Deep wants to establish a new boundary on floor 120, which would give them access to the farms on 122 and solve their food shortage. Meanwhile, Paul Billings continues his investigation into Patrick Kennedy, specifically what he knows about Juliette Nichols. But Patrick won't say shit until he's seen by a doctor. He was shot shortly after setting fire to a raider post a few episodes ago. Unfortunately, the only doc available in the Down Deep is a new shadow with little experience. Thus, Paul calls on his wife to find one from up top. Kathleen Billings enlists the help of Juliette's father, Dr. Pete Nichols, and after some clever manipulation of the barricade guard, they're able to make it through. Dr. Nichols defied Bernard last episode by refusing to help him in his quest to stabilize the silo, so he's a great candidate for this mission. He successfully removes the bullet from Patrick, but Patrick isn't willing to give up what he knows just yet. This is where we see a side of Paul we haven't seen before. He seems a little unhinged, but I'm here for it. Upon threatening to turn Patrick into Judge Sims, Patrick relays everything he knows about what happened to Juliette. This includes how he and Danny Bly hacked the hard drive and uploaded the Carmody cleaning video to the entire silo for 10 seconds, something Paul didn't see. And as an aside, we haven't seen what happened to Danny. All we know is that he was taken to judicial seclusion. Patrick confirms that the outside world is like the page Paul showed him, only 1,000,000 times more beautiful. He says that Sims was the one who told him to firebomb the raider post in exchange for a drug that can make you lose your memory. If Sims never intended on fulfilling his end of the bargain, it calls into question whether this drug exists at all. These revelations impact Paul's decision at the end of the episode. We already know Paul has his doubts about what's really going on in the silo, but this really puts him over the edge, so much so that when he confronts Knox and Shirley, whom he was tasked to arrest, he defies Bernard. This, combined with Martha's testimony that Knox and Shirley were framed for the murder of Judge Meadows, sees Paul demanding an investigation before he gives up the location of the fugitives. This so pisses off Bernard that he orders all radio communication in the silo to be shut down. Now, Paul says that he's not taking sides, but I think Paul is kidding himself here, and Bernard knows it too, stating that he's now lost the sheriff. Paul will discuss his decision with his wife, as well as the recent update that his syndrome symptoms have subsided. These coincide with him not taking his herbs. Is there a connection there, or, as Kathleen suggests, has something changed within him that's caused this? Perhaps the episode's biggest twist is Lucas Kyle going from prisoner to Bernard's new shadow. Lucas has made progress in deciphering Salvador Quinn's code found on the hard drive. Salvador Quinn was the head of IT over 140 years ago during the last rebellion. By trying all sorts of combinations of shifting letters around, Lucas has been able to uncover 2 words of note. Silo, which he thinks is silo misspelled, although Bernard dismisses this, and Allie, which happens to be the name of Salvador's daughter. Bernard believes this word to be a code within a code, but to decipher it, they would have to see the legacy. The legacy was first referenced in episode 204 when Bernard asked Meadows if she ever used one of these VR headsets when she sat with the Legacy. It's heavily implied that the Legacy is some sort of advanced computer, like the one found in the server room. If you stick around to my trailer sleuthing section, I believe we can catch a glimpse of where the Legacy is stored. To gain access to the Legacy, however, it appears you have to be either an IT or its shadow, which would explain why Meadows knew of it since she was once Bernard's shadow. This is a no-brainer for Lukas, who just a few days ago thought he'd be spending the next 10 years in the mines. There is a Reddit post claiming to have solved this code, but I can't verify if this is real or not. I'll leave a link to the post below, but in it states, "The pact is rigged. To those felt the chosen ones, the founders didn't build a single silo, they built 50, and they created the safeguard." We'll see if this pans out in the episodes to come. Episode 206 shows us how Sims and Camille are actively working to undermine Bernard. Sims even has his own set of spies like Diego, who informs him about the second gang of rebels using a concrete saw. This is how he's able to know about them digging through the floor before anyone else. When Sims informs his wife about this, she basically tells him to do nothing, proving that their allegiance isn't to Bernard and the silo, but to whatever will further their own agenda. Sims also catches Lukas on Bernard's computer, which I found an interesting bit of information going forward. Unfortunately, we only get one scene with Juliette this episode. The last we saw her, she found the helmet to finish her suit, but passed out due to the infected injury on her arm. She wakes up an unknown amount of time later, having been injected by Solo's homemade antibiotics. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I don't know how to make antibiotics, but apparently it's a highly complex process, and Solo doesn't seem like the most brilliant tool in the shed. Knowing how many lies this guy has told, we can't take anything he says at face value. Solo has hidden Juliette's suit, telling her he won't give it back unless she fixes the ground pump. Last episode, we learned Solo has about 10 months before the water fills up, and he needs Juliette and her expertise to fix the pump so the water goes back down. But Juliette doesn't have time for that. Any day now, the dwellers of Silo 18 could rebel and head outside, meeting the same fate as those in Silo 17. However, I don't think Solo's going to let her do that as we head into our trailer sleuthing section. Keep in mind I won't be going over every clip from the trailers, just the ones I think are relevant for the episodes to come. Speaking of Juliette, we know that she stays in Silo 17 to get that pump working again. Here we see her with a new underwater breathing device. Knox here at the bottom of the silo with this new contraption used to spread Juliette Lives flyers amongst all the members of the silo. We don't know if members of the Down Deep actually know if she's still alive, or if this is simply a rallying call to get everyone on their side. This appears to be Lukas at the bottom of the silo. The only reason I'd suspect he'd be down here is to investigate the tunnel he showed Bernard on the hard drive. Juliette here in front of someone who doesn't look like Solo. The background on the left here looks a lot like that found in this image here, which I believe is a room behind the vaulted server room. This is where I think the Legacy is, and it could also mean that the Legacy isn't a computer but a person. Another shot of Juliette here with Solo. This time it looks like she has her suit back and she's preparing to head back home. Here are Knox and Shirley using those weapons Knox had made. Seems like the rebellion is in full swing. Lukas here in what I can only presume is the room that contains the Legacy. It's filled with all sorts of artifacts which depict the legacy of humankind. So the Legacy may not be a computer, but perhaps all these books and encyclopedias. Notice the solar system model from the ceiling, something Lukas theorized with Judge Meadows before her death. Bernard here in a similar, if not the same, room. It's hard to tell because of the blur if that's Lukas or someone new entirely. And if it is someone new, is it this silo's version of the Legacy? To keep it simple, I think the Legacy is one of three things: an advanced computer, a person, or this room filled with all sorts of artifacts, books, and encyclopedias. If you haven't read the books, let me know what you think it is. I also wonder if Solo used his Legacy in order to make those antibiotics for Juliette. We also have this exchange of the pact. I think that the clue to solving Salvador's code requires some sort of key which can only be found in this book. Here we have Salvador Quinn's copy of the pact where he has underlined certain words which spell out the word proceed. Paul has a copy of Judge Meadows' pact which might also include this key since we know she cracked the code. And that about does it for this week's episode of Silo. What do you think will happen next? I want to hear your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, be sure to like and subscribe, and for more bad takes you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ThinkStoryYT. Until next time, remember, Daddy loves you very much.